you would introduce the bill.
Yes.
Wait, 1 second.
Okay, we're good.
All right, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Alan Raff. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff of the New Hampshire Senate. I come before you here to introduce Senate Bill 758 FN on behalf of Senator Feltus. The bill originally titled Banning Kratom. Senator Feltus had an amendment drafted that actually was a replace all amendment that instead of banning Kratom outright, regulates it as a product and follows suit behind 4 or 5 other states who've enacted similar legislation in the past four legislative sessions. As far as I understand it, and again, if you have questions about this, we can get them answered by Senator Feltus. Just let me know what they are. I'll try to answer any questions that you have at this time. But as I understand it, the way that it was being looked at was either you can control this product like you would control a drug, or you can control it like you would control food or any other product like that. There obviously has been a lot of news regarding people dying of kratom overdose or kratom-related overdose, but from further research, it seems as though those overdoses were caused because of adulterated kratom or kratom mixed with other things, and not necessarily not because it was pure kratom. So what this replace all amendment seeks to do is to have rules instated by the Department of Health and Human Services as to regulating it, making sure that people who sell the adulterated kratom, like if it was tainted in a way that is harmful or dilatory, that those people receive penalties and punishment for doing so, but not banning it outright, as there is research to suggest that it is an alternative for pain, chronic pain, and a substitution for opioids. I can try to answer questions you guys have, but as you can imagine, my knowledge is somewhat limited on it, but I'm happy to try to answer.
Senator Fuller.
My biggest concern is, do we have enough copies of this amendment?
Brendan's working on it right now.
So that everyone has a chance to see this, and to understand that it's no longer a ban on kratom.
Correct.
But I think it's important. First of all, we have a section that deals with definitions.
Yes.
A section that deals with certain kratom products will be prohibited. Those are the ones that have been adulterated.
Correct, and there's a certain
and there's
number.
Explanation
Yes.
of different adulterated substances that are problematical. Then, as I also understand it, that no dealer shall distribute or sell a kratom product to a person under 21 years of age. So there is a ban related to age.
Correct. And that follows with some of the other states that have enacted similar legislation.
Again, there are penalties.
Correct.
There's rulemaking, and there's registration of kratom products. It says that any producer, manufacturer, dealer of the kratom product shall register with the department for a fee. Has that fee been established?
I don't believe so. Not to my knowledge, because this would be a whole new set of rules, and registering with the Department of Health and Human Services would be brand new.
So where is rulemaking?
On page 2, line 22.
Thank you. I just skipped over that. I apologize. Okay. So it would deal with the fees then there, right?
Yes.
Okay. And as I understand it, that originally seal says that someone who sells an unregistered kratom product shall be guilty of a civil violation and assessed a fine. But we know what that fine would be. That would be set by rules. Okay. And the department may seize and destroy any unregistered kratom product offered for sale within the state. So that pretty much covers what's in the amendment.
Yes.
What I wanted to, I know was that this bill, through this amendment, which really changes the legislation, is based on how kratom is being regulated in other states. Is that correct?
Correct.
So there's nothing in this that is radically new or different from how it's being regulated elsewhere?
No, it's not. I believe, off the top of my head, I know that Utah and Nevada, I believe, are the two that I remember. I believe there's two more that have regulated it in a similar way, all in a manner like a consumer protection situation like this, as opposed to an outright ban, because of the research shows, I guess, that it tends to be a less addictive substance. It's more like caffeine, less like a hard drug, and that it does help with chronic pain.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. Help me understand. Are these penalties similar to selling tobacco products or liquor to people under 21?
I think it's actually something more like, I don't think that's exactly the through line there. I think that it would be something more like when you would see like salvia or tobacco that was adulterated in a certain way, not selling to minors. That's not the penalty that would happen if you were selling to minors, but if you were a vendor selling tobacco that was tainted or a substance that was tainted, I think that the laws and how I understand it was that they tried to balance how you would regulate something that is somewhat similar to a food product and something that is used in a medicinal or otherwise kind of way.
So, I guess what I'm getting at is I would have to look to see whether the penalty for sale of tobacco or alcohol would be criminal under 21. I know it's tightly regulated, or whether it's similar to this.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if this is strong enough. You know, my concern is selling to minors is not something to do a slap on the wrist for. We're
Right,
a
I
little
think
bit stronger about that than in New Hampshire than.
absolutely. I think that the difference would be that Kratom isn't like alcohol. It's kind of the whole point, is that it's not a drug like alcohol. It's not a drug like opiates. It's not something that requires criminal time for something like that, is how I understand it. But I will get you an answer as to what the penalties are for tobacco and alcohol in a pre-ruling situation.
Great. Are there any other questions for Alan? Seeing none, thank you. At this point, let me just see if there's any, somebody giving me a critter to bring in. All right. I would like to, many of you signed in opposition, probably not understanding that the whole bill has now been replaced by regulation. So there is not a ban in this amendment. This is now regulating Kratom as it has been regulated in other states that have chosen to regulate it. And actually, if you're a Kratom user, these are beneficial because they actually put a penalty on lacing or I forget the word they use, hacking or that kind of thing. So it's late, it's 4:15. We're here to listen, but if you are okay with this new concept, and we're going to get you copies of the amendment if you don't already have them, you don't feel compelled to speak, but we are here to listen. So I think what's been recognized between the original bill and this amendment is that there is, that Kratom is not perhaps as dangerous as it was originally thought to be, but that it is in need of state regulation. That being said, I'm going to go through the list. If I call your name and you don't feel like you need to speak, that's fine. You don't have to come up. Okay. So we have, I'm just going to read your names, and actually, if you don't want to speak but you want to change your support or opposition, shout out when I call your name. John Williams from the department, did you want to speak?
I do have a couple of
Okay.
So the department, this is late filed legislation, and we appreciate that it comes from leadership and from Senator Saltis. The bill is originally for the department. We conducted a financial analysis and are in the process to getting that as the bill came to your committee, which would schedule this as a controlled drug through the process through the Department of Health and Human Services. I'm here to represent that we would have been able to do that, absorb that under existing resources. It's something that we do, even though historically we haven't done it in the decade, because it just hasn't come up. This bill, the complete rewrite, actually embeds it in chapter 146, which deals with food purity. So you're looking at things like vinegar, other items like that, not kratom, which I would imagine we just need to have a thoughtful discussion on our agency having the resources to do the kinds of things that are identified in this bill, because this would be a new task for our department. We're here as a resource to you, to Senator Feltus, but I would be remiss if I didn't make my hyperventilating comments about this new task with no appropriation to do the work. And it seemingly doesn't seem well suited for 146 in terms of food purity, would be one contention, perhaps, and we'd have to look at other models. He was probably aware that in the past legislative sessions, there have been discussions around synthetic products such as bed salts and also spices. Certainly those were concerns that came before the legislature as well. I would just suggest some thoughtful research in how those were handled and how it might fit with this particular idea. Clearly, Senator Feltus is being responsive to the concerns of numerous people that I see in this room, but I just need to make this committee aware that we do need to work through some significant issues if the department's taking ownership of a program like this with no appropriation.
So you would normally, 146 does fall under the purview of DHHS?
It does. It falls under our Division for Public Health Services. We typically, a bill as it was previously drafted, we're looking more towards our legal and regulatory services and our Bureau of Government Alcohol Services, because it was viewed as a potential issue for those program areas. This changes the dynamics completely over now to public health.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for John? All right. So back to our plan here. If you want to speak or change your how you feel about the bill, about the amendment, please let me know. Michael Overstreet?
Yeah. Before the amendment. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Let's see. So if you can, for everybody, the way this works is we're here to listen. So introduce yourself, where you're from. You don't need to give an address, just the town, and then tell us your story. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Michael Overstreet. I came from Massachusetts today, and I am in agreement with the amendment. So I'll try to keep it brief. But there's just a couple things that I would like to talk about. I do have a podcast called The Kratom Guy Show. We talk about Kratom news, current events, often have influential guests such as doctors, scientists. And one of the things that's very important that's different than Kratom than your traditional agonist, full agonist, it's a partial agonist that's biased. So it operates on very specific G proteins. Which essentially doctors have described it to me that it's operates as almost as a dimmer switch. So it can only go so high. It doesn't carry those negative side effects of a traditional opioid. This is not an opioid. It's not derived from morphine or opium. So that it is a partial agonist that hits on the opioid receptor. There's never been any deaths in the origin countries. It's only when in Western and U.S. when it's mixed with deadly substances, people are dying from it. The original 44 deaths that the FDA claimed one of those was murder by gunshot wound to the chest, was attributed to kratom. Another one was suicide by hanging. There was 9 deaths in Sweden from a tramadol synthetic. One guy fell out of a window, was on drugs and alcohol, broken arm and a leg, refused medical treatment, and that was deemed kratom related. And the vast majority of them are drugs, alcohol, underlying health conditions. The most recent report of the CDC, the 91 deaths, and they said kratom, only 7 was had kratom only in their system. With those deaths, they said other drugs couldn't be ruled out, but they didn't say why in the report. And then in that report, they sourced New England Journal of Medicine, a study out of Colorado, where in that they look at 15 deaths that were attributed to kratom, and they discovered that 4 were only the mitragynine only, the main alkaloid. But what they did was they performed a very specific post-mortem blood test. It's called comprehensive toxicology screening with high-performance liquid chromatography with tandem mass spectrometry. And what they found out with that very specific post-mortem blood test is that 3 clearly involved other drugs that weren't originally in the autopsy report or medical examiner report. And the 4th one was there was no residual blood. So what we're finding is that when these medical examiners or autopsy reports are reporting that it's just kratom or kratom only, there's no standardized testing. So it's actually a very safe substance. I consume kratom, I consume it daily. And the amount of people I have the text messages and direct messages, I could show that people are attributing kratom to saving their lives. And I'll wrap it up with that.
Okay. Are there any questions for Michael? What town are you from?
I'm from Medford, Mass.
Well, welcome to New Hampshire.
Thank you. Glad I could come.
All right. Lois Corcoran.
Okay, that's me.
Are you changing to support the
I need to change to support the amendment because I didn't understand that was the case when we got here.
Is Michael still here? Are you supporting? Or
I support the amendment.
Okay. All right. Lois, tell us where you're from.
Okay, my name is Lois Corcoran. I'm from Charlestown, New Hampshire, and I'm 56 years old, and I work in a chocolate factory. So what that means is I'm on my feet all day, and I'm running heavy equipment, and I had to drive to get here, and all of those things I can do while I'm taking the kratom. You know, if I was on the opiates, then I couldn't do any of them. And my husband also has rheumatoid arthritis, and he uses this sometimes. In fact, he goes back and forth, but when he can, he avoids the opiates. So I just wanted to say I've been sharing this with other employees because we're all finding that it helps us. One has sciatica, one had a car accident, all of these things. And the kratom, what I tell people is that it gives me pain relief, it gives me an energy boost, and it doesn't make me high, but it changes my attitude. So what that does is change me from, oh gee, I don't want to do this, to, okay, I'm ready, let's go. And that really helps me work all day. So there's more than just pain relief involved in this. I don't take Prozac or any other attitude changers, but this one works for me.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I have a quick one. Have you ever missed like 4 or 5 days of kratom?
Oh yeah, I
Do
saw.
you get any kind of withdrawal?
No.
Thanks. Rebecca Morris.
Yes, sir. I
You wanna
would like to change my, I
change
do
your vote?
support the amendment. Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to, I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to say that I do support the amendment. I am wholeheartedly against a kratom ban. I found kratom about 8 years ago now. I am a chronic pain patient. I'm a 2-time cervical cancer survivor. I have gone through a lot in my life. I was set on fire as a child, and as a result, I deal with some lingering nerve damage and a lot of pain. I also suffer from rheumatoid arthritis, and I fell 2 stories and landed on my back when list, if it were, from 11 or 12 different pills every day, and not, you know, pills that I take every day, but like prescriptions that I needed every single day to help me get through life, down to through life this time. So, and while it's, you know, just my story, and I'm just one person, there are thousands more with similar stories where I came from. And I feel that it would truly be a travesty if it were to be banned in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Jonathan Sampson.
Change to support of the amendment. My name is Jonathan Sampson. I'm a lifetime resident and native of Merrimack, New Hampshire. I am an automotive mechanic, and as a mechanic, I contort myself into all kinds of shapes and have the pains that come up on occasion, as well as arthritis that happens that started from using impact tools on a regular basis. The Kratom definitely helps with my arthritis pain and the other kind of pain that I actually end up running into. I don't use it all the time. I use it on occasion when I need to. I have no negative side effects to it. There's nothing that happens mentally or nothing that would impair me. I'm able to work a full day with heavy equipment without any kind of problems or anything that set me back. I've also shared it with some of my coworkers who have the same exact problems I do, and it helps them as well. So any kind of a ban would definitely, it would take away our ability and our liberty to treat ourselves with natural solutions. Thank you for your time.
Questions? Thank you for testifying. Amanda Rayner?
Hi.
You want
Going to change it
change
to
it
support,
up?
yes,
Okay.
please. Hi, my name is Amanda Rayner. I'm 41 years old and I'm a mother of one. I'm disabled due to degenerative and cervical disc disease. I have herniated and bulging disc, fibromyalgia, chronic pain and fatigue, Lyme disease, as well as depression, anxiety, and PTSD. My life with pain meds started at the age of 9. Right, it sounds a little crazy. 9 years old, I was given Vicodin, 90 pills a month for my migraines because the doctors ran out of things to do to help me. So for 30 years, between my migraines and my disabilities, I've been on pain medicine. For the last 3 years, I've been taking Kratom. I started searching for natural solutions for my pain because my mother lost her life due to taking pain medication over an 8-month span. So I was not going to go out the same way she did. With Kratom, I can go days without taking it. I don't have any withdrawals, and I've taken it almost every day for 3 years. And I haven't had to take over 10,000 pills in a matter of 3 months or a 3-year span. So Kratom has definitely given me my life back. I do simple things as go to the grocery store and laundry, which not many people like to do, but when you can't do it, people take it for granted. So I'm glad that you guys are changing it to support and regulating for an age. I do approve with that, so I thank you for your time.
Any questions? I have a quick question.
Yes.
You said you've been on some kind of pain medicine for 30 years. Has the Kratom, maybe you said this, but have you been able to come off of that?
I don't take any pills, any
Just the
pharmaceuticals.
Kratom
The only thing I take is allergy medicine now, and I've lowered my blood pressure medicine, but I'm off all pain meds, all anxiety meds, and all depression medication. Thanks,
Thank you.
Kratom.
Thank you
Thank
for
you very
sharing your
much.
story. Abe Silfani. Remember, if you are now happy with this, you don't have to speak, but you're happy to listen. Okay. One last call for Abe Silfani. No? Okay. Joe, Representative Hammond, he's still here?
He had to leave.
Okay, thank you. I know how he feels about it. Seamus Casey.
Yes.
Are you still in opposition? Or?
I was in opposition, and I am actually here to support this introduction of the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. So I'm happy to see that that has happened. I would like to pass around, this is the original model legislation for reference, just in case there's any differences, because I've not had time to really thoroughly look at the amendment as proposed, but it looks substantially the same. And based on that, that's a really good thing. The only concern I have is looking at the effective date of the amendment that was passed in. It's effective January 2021, which I understand the Department of Health and Human Services would need time to implement whatever they have to do. The bill, as introduced by Senator Feltes, would have immediately placed it into Schedule 1 in preparation for the Department of Health and Human Services to do so. So my only concern is with that 1 year to almost 1 year time frame, can the Department of Health and Human Services step in and try to schedule it as Schedule 1 while we're waiting for it to take effect? Okay. So that was the only concern I had with the amendment that I was able to read and skim today. So I'm happy to hear that this has been introduced. This is what I came here to try to do. That Senator Feltes has got the word on this.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you for your testimony and for the model legislation. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Dave Herman.
I flew up from Atlanta, so I have to speak.
We Shermans have a fondness for Atlanta.
Do you?
Yeah.
My favorite thing there forever. Yes, would you hand these out? I was told that we had a limited amount of time today, so I prepared a statement that we could hand out rather than read. And secondarily,
If you can just
yeah,
introduce yourself, and we know you're from Atlanta.
I'm Dave Herman. I'm chairman of the board of the American Kratom Association. We represent 15 million people nationally, and a lot of it's a consumer organization, and our efforts are to maintain legality and also to regulate kratom properly. To begin, there were a couple of questions that were asked. I think maybe I can just get you through those before we get any further. One of them is synthetic. This bill bans synthetic mitragynine or 7-hydroxymitragynine. So there will be nothing synthetic that is approved in this bill. As far as the writing of the bill, if any questions come up, we have done this now in 4 states successfully through governor's signatures. Last week, the Missouri House voted to pass the Kratom Consumer Protection Act 139-6. And I gave you a top sheet that shows that Oklahoma yesterday passed the bill 97-0. In Georgia, where I'm from, we passed the bill 164-1 and 50-0. Crosses partisan lines completely. And the reason for that is, today a 12-year-old can go into a store and buy Kratom. Under our bill, they can. Today, there's no regulation on the contents. Now, if you get caught, you might be in trouble. But in this scenario, we're saying if it's not pure, unadulterated Kratom, it's illegal. And in fact, if we find somebody that's adulterating the product, we'll turn them in. Give you a little history quickly, and I'll try not to waste your time too much. In 2009, there were a cluster of deaths in Sweden. There were 9 of them. And it was from a internet-based product called Kratom, which is a Kratom-based product. Everybody went nuts. We got to ban this, it's deadly, it's no good. In 2011, a scientist named Kronstrand and his peers put together a study of the 9 deaths. And what they found out was they weren't death by kratom, they were death by desmethyltramadol. And desmethyltramadol is either an ingredient to make tramadol or it's a metabolite, depending on how it actually delivers. But in the dosages that they found, if you put that amount of desmethyltramadol in a glass of water, you'd be dead. Well, that was 2011. In 2012, after this peer-reviewed study came out, the FDA still touted the 9 deaths as a reason to start an import alert event. Even today, they're still talking about the 9 deaths as if Earlier you heard the mention of 44 deaths. There's not one of those that's attributable to anything other than adulterated or polydrug use. You heard about the 91 deaths that CDC mentioned, and it's interesting, if you read the article, the headline is completely different. What CDC is saying is that we need a higher level of equipment and testing capability to see what really happened. It comes out as 91 Kratom-related deaths. FDA has been on a decades-long crusade to control the supplement industry. And the first time we all saw this was in the early 90s. At that point, Congress stepped in and created something called the DSHEA Act, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, to stop the FDA from overreach. We're now back into overreach. When this all began for us as the American Kratom Association, FDA was viewed as an entity of the US government that got along with everyone else. And frankly, we all thought you should trust your government. Well, why should we trust them if the government doesn't trust them? DEA normally schedules an item within 90 days of when it's purported to ask to be scheduled. In this instance, they now are 2.5 years into a scheduling request, and they haven't said anything about it. They don't do it, they just ignore it. NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, was originally in favor of a Kratom ban. NIDA has just recently given $7 million in 2 grants to the University of Florida for the study of Kratom. You don't study something you're trying to ban. So where we are is there's been a movement nationally to look at this and say, you know, if people think it's good for them, fine, we just have to be sure it doesn't hurt them. That's really our charge. And within the framework of this, you heard mention the New England Journal of Medicine commentary on the 15 deaths. A series of doctors, practitioners in Colorado wrote that commentary. And what they said really was they had insufficient testing, and as soon as it really got tested, they found polydrug use. So we're very much against adulterated product. We're very much against polydrug use. Occasionally you'll see something that keeps coming up here. Someone that died had kratom in their system and they had fentanyl or morphine or whatever in their system. If you're trying to get rid of that kind of addiction, the first thing you do is taper down. You don't cold turkey. And as you're tapering down, your kratom use goes up. It is not illogical to see that someone who fell off the wagon and took a drug had kratom in their system. It didn't cause their death. You heard mentioned the gunshot wound. Well, the guy got shot in the chest, and FDA just lists that as a kratom-related death. And my answer at that time was we should ban all bullets rubbed in kratom. I don't see any other use for it. We have inconsistency after inconsistency. NIDA is no longer on the side of FDA. DEA is no longer on the side of FDA. So we feel reasonably comfortable not being on the side of FDA. The states are moving very rapidly in the direction of let's regulate. You don't want a black market for kratom. That's when the guys with the guns and the adulterants are everywhere. Prohibition has never worked in this country. It won't work now. But if you leave it open for study, you go to Christopher McCurdy at the University of Florida and look at his research. You look at Oliver Grundman in Arizona and you look at his research. And by the way, all those are available to you on our website. You're going to find a body of evidence from the scientific community that says there's a low abuse potential, there's a low addiction potential, and there's a low potential harm to the public well-being. If those things are true, then you can't ban it. DEA came to the conclusion that the emergency scheduling portion of the Controlled Substances Act did not apply. And while they asked for a ban in 2016 in August, in October, they got rid of it. They eliminated it. Interestingly enough, there have been 82 times when the emergency scheduling provisions were asked for. This is the only time they've ever rebuffed them. Congressmen, senators, lawyers, doctors, there's a wide community of people that say you should research it, you should control it, and we're all for that. And by the way, since we've done this in multiple states now, we're more than happy to help in any way we can. If you want language or you want a situation that's come up that you haven't seen, maybe we've been lucky enough to see it in another state. We're happy to share those things and work with you. That's pretty much it. The statement speaks for itself, but it's a changing time, and we hope that in New Hampshire we can move forward here in a progressive way of being sure that we're regulated. That's how research gets done. That's how it works. One final story, I can't help myself, I'm just out of control. I have a dear friend, 25-year friend. 6 weeks ago, he called me, and I'll give you his name, phone number, anything you want, he'll gladly tell you the same thing. He said, Dave, I want to try Kratom. And his name's Roger. I said, Roger, what's going on? Well, he had his colon removed 12 years ago. Botched surgery, everything was awful. He slept in a bathtub most nights because he was scared not to. His pouch gurgled. Life was hell. It's the only way you can describe it. Nothing worked. Opioids didn't work. Nothing worked. So he said, I want to try this. And I said, what did your wife say? Well, his wife looked it up on the internet and said, it's going to kill you. That's what the internet says. And I said, well, what did you say? And he goes, I asked her if she thought Dave would hurt me. And her answer was no, he wouldn't. So 6 weeks ago, 9 o'clock in the morning, he took Kratom. He delayed his opioids. He was going to take them at noon, but he wanted to give this a fair chance to see if it worked. And he hasn't taken an opioid yet. When I hear that and I see that on such a personal level for me, this is a cause for us. That's all it is. We believe in this. And we hope that you will. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Senator Bradley.
Thank you very much. So, in looking at the amendment that was proposed, have you had a chance to review it?
I have glanced through it. I haven't done it in depth, but I thought it was pretty good.
So, knowing that this is the first step of the process,
Right.
and if we pass it, it still has to go to the House, further review, all that. It seems to me that just about everybody in this room is in support, at least conceptually, with the amendment. You're willing to, work with us through the process?
Absolutely.
If we pass this? And you think it's a good first step?
Yes, sir, I do. And historically, every state where this has been passed, we ended up in the middle of it because of our experience level. And we're happy to share that, and we'll commit to you right now to help in any way we can.
Okay.
Just to follow up on that, would you be able to get us copies of the Oklahoma and Missouri bills,
Absolutely.
just so we can compare?
Yes, sir. Oklahoma and Missouri.
Yeah.
Would you like the 4 that have already passed as well?
Sure.
I'll get you everything you want.
I need more.
Make less trouble somewhere else.
Yeah, that's right.
No, we think this is full disclosure, full transparency. We'll give you anything you ask for.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Safe flight home. So at this point, it is now 4:45. No, I'm making it. There are 2 people here who supported the original bill. Is there anybody here who wants to speak who is against the amendment? Okay. What's your name?
My name is Paul Seco. I'm a lifelong resident of Litchfield, New Hampshire.
Are you signed?
I was on one of the sheets somewhere.
Okay, let me find you. Hold
Pardon my chicken scratch, but cursive ain't what it used to be.
on. No. Do we have any more sign-ups?
Is it Ethan? No?
Paul. Yeah, we can just have you sign it. So, Paul, tell us,
Okay.
you're from where?
Litchfield, New Hampshire. I'm a lifelong resident. I'm 21 years old. As I understand it, the amendment as it's been put forth today is no longer to ban but to regulate, correct? And part of that regulation is that sale under 21 years old is illegal.
That's correct.
So I come from a background, not thankfully of any great personal hardship. I've never struggled with addiction myself. I think it's really hard to talk about this issue without also talking about addiction in tandem. We here in New Hampshire are no strangers to what heroin has done to the state. Manchester, New Hampshire is the heroin capital of the world in terms of deaths per capita because of it. And the reason why I have to oppose this amendment, even though I think it is much more smart than a ban, is that addiction doesn't pick an age. I know too many people who I've had their lives saved firsthand. I used to work in the industry. I won't name the company that I used to work for the sake of the privacy of that institution, but I did 6 months as floor sales and 6 months as management with this establishment. And in that time, I can tell you that I had no less than 20 people tell me that Kratom saved their lives, and I had no less than 10 people come in within the first week of breaking their addiction. And this stuff was the stuff that did it for them. One girl in particular, she came in on her 4th day clean. Anybody who has experience with addiction knows that the first week is the toughest. To be able to drag yourself anywhere after 4 days clean is hugely impressive. Well, this girl, young girl, 20 years old, in my store, looking at me with broken eyes saying, I've heard this stuff can help. And it did. I'm delighted to report to you that a year on now, she's found gainful employment. I found out that she went to my same Campbell High School, grew up just a few streets down from my best friend. But addiction doesn't pick an age. And while I respect a lot the good faith behind this bill of wanting things to be safe and wanting the people of New Hampshire to be safe, the fact of the matter is that there is people who are 18 that are addicted to heroin that cannot get access to this. They are a lot more likely to die. Living free or dying. It's that simple for me. Thank you very much.
Is there an age that you could support?
I think 18. I think that 18 is the standard. I would say that Kratom is not a perfect substance. I don't think perfect substances exist. I think a paintball gun or a can of compressed air or an avocado used in the right fashion could be dangerous. Absolutely. But 18, I think, is the age where we've decided that you can go and fight on behalf of this country, or you can go buy a pack of cigarettes, and I think it's the age where we should let people start making decisions. But the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of people in this state who are young, who are teenagers, people I've known who have died from this, that this stuff could have saved their life. And locking it behind the same kind of thing that means that you have to be above a certain age, it tells you you don't have agency over dealing with your problem. It tells you that you are not old enough to seek a solution to a problem that you were not ever old enough to fall into. I speak very personally about this. It's hard for me to not get emotional because I know addicts in my life who have died. I know addicts in my life who have recovered. And I have been able to have the unique experience that through sales and through customer service, I've been able to change people's lives for the better with this product. I have people that will come to me on the first week of their broken addiction, inches from the door of death, and I have people who come back 6 months later, whole new people because of this stuff. So, you know what? If there's going to be a warning label on it, so be it. And I think that everybody is responsible for the things that they put in their body, in the manner in which they use it. Kratom is not a perfect substance, and I think that no one in here should be under the impression that it's a perfect substance. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, there's no training as such. Speaking only from a personal perspective of one guy in one store servicing southern New Hampshire who was able to help a lot of people of all shapes, creeds, colors, walks of life. And I'm not just talking about addicts too. It's important to remember that this helps everybody. I had guys that were in Fallujah that came over because the counseling didn't help and the medication and the sedatives didn't help, and Kratom was the only thing that let them work a job and raise their kids right. I've had people with chronic pain who never thought they would be able to so much as walk around on their own every day again, who are now working part-time jobs. I mean, this is not something that we can, I think, morally restrict access to any more than we have to, because the fact of the matter is that heroin's been illegal and people are still dying faster than we can gather all the bodies. And anything that makes Kratom harder to get for the public is bad for New Hampshire. And, I'm not usually a political guy. I'm not usually the sort of person that would drag myself to the State House on a beautiful day to wait in 3 hours for a stuffy room with a bunch of other good people. But I think it's really important that if this language does go forward and it is considered that an age amendment be considered for 18 instead of 21, because I promise you, if you gotta be 21 to buy Kratom, the guy behind the high school selling your heroin doesn't care how old you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions, Senator Fuller?
Yes, my question is, I find myself very moved by your statement that addiction doesn't choose any age. And I'm wondering if even preventing it for those under 18, when we have, know that there's a lot of adolescents that are dealing with addiction. I'm wondering if you think 15 would be...
Well, I'll say this. In my time in high school was when this heroin problem was becoming a real problem in the state, and we had a heroin forum. The kid that spoke at the forum, when everyone hears we're going to have a former addict come talk, you maybe picture some grizzled up guy with track marks in his arm. This kid was my age. He was a junior in high school. He had been addicted to heroin and gotten clean by the time he was graduating high school. So, while I understand that for the purposes of appropriation and what the HHS is going to do with it when there's no age limit and things get a little more amorphous, I can appreciate those difficulties. But what we have to understand is that addicts in the zeitgeist are not treated well. People always want to talk about addiction and they always want to talk about addicts, but very few people have been fortunate enough to shake as many of their hands and look into as many of their faces as I have. And I'm delighted to say that this stuff, better than methadone clinics, better than cold turkey, better than just try not getting addicted to something, this stuff works. And I think that the other problem that we need to face is that addiction is a tough thing to talk about. And people that are addicted to something to come out and say, I'm now going to counseling, I'm now going to therapy, I'm now going to the methadone clinic. These things affect our social lives. These things affect our work. These things affect how the people around us perceive us. And I think that people having a relatively safe, relatively affordable, and completely unadulterated way, naturally, to stop this problem is paramount. You know, here in New Hampshire, I care so much about everybody because we're a small state, we're all we got. And I do believe that while the nature of this bill is in good faith, we can't operate the same way the other states have been operating because the problem here is worse than it is there. You know, I could sit here and hem and haw about this all day. For the sake of everyone else in the room, I just want to say that I would strongly consider some support for this legislation, but I think an age resolution or lack thereof has to be absolutely no higher than 18, and I think anything different than that will cause death.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you for your testimony.
Very welcome.
Just make sure, did we get him signed in?
Yeah, did I? I did sign that somewhere. I did it again.
Paul Seco? I got you.
Yep.
I found it.
That's it.
Got it. Thanks.
Excuse me, Senator Sherman, sorry guys, jump out in front of you guys. It's my understanding that it's already an 18-plus product here in the state of New Hampshire. No?
No.
Not sure.
Okay. So, yeah, let's just keep the department, but other people would answer that, so thank you. And so back to anyone who opposes the amendment. Sir, what's your name?
My name's Ian Freeman. I'm against this bill as a ban, and I originally come here to say, what are you thinking? Haven't we learned that prohibition doesn't work? At the same time, we see a decriminalization of cannabis, we see the criminalization of yet another plant. So I'm glad to see that it has changed, but I'm still in opposition to regulation as well, because regulation really just raises costs unnecessarily. It puts unnecessary burdens on the marketplace. If there's a problem with adulterated kratom, and I have not heard anything about any of this adulterated kratom being a problem here in New Hampshire. Does anyone know about that? Is that the case?
Sir, you're testifying.
I've not heard anything about that here in New Hampshire. And if there is a problem with a vendor who's selling adulterated product, the marketplace can take care of that through feedback to that vendor, through ostracism to that vendor if necessary. We don't need to have some government agency coming in with their guns and their so-called authority and their rulemaking. You guys really don't need to tell people what to do. You don't need to tell people how to run their lives and how to run their businesses, and you don't need to regulate a plant. So just leave people alone. And I will also echo the last gentleman's comments about treating people under the age of 21 as though they're children. We're seeing this in the area of tobacco, we're seeing it in the area of regulation of cannabis, and it's really insulting to people who are 18, 19, and 20 years old to tell them that they can't make decisions for themselves. So I also would agree that if you're going to regulate this, that it should not have any kind of age limit on it whatsoever. We're talking about a plant here. Thank you for listening. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Thank you for your testimony. There was one other hand. Is there anyone? Just a minute.
Sure, just brought a letter that I sent to Representative Feltus.
And I'm sorry, your name?
Anthony O'Shaughnessy. So I guess I'd like to start with, I'm in support of part of this bill, there are parts I don't see that I'd like addressed. But first, I grew up in Manchester, New Hampshire. I went to college in Connecticut. I returned to New Hampshire. I currently work at Farnham Center, so I'm here to provide some clinical expertise and some personal experience with this substance. I have a history of opioid use. I am a recovered IV drug user. I was sober for approximately 6 years, and I, as the director of Ray House in Farnham Center in Franklin, New Hampshire, started using this, what I thought was an innocuous substance, a completely benign substance that acted somewhat like an opioid. I don't disagree that it helps with mood. It certainly helps relieve anxiety. It helps with pain management. It helps with all those things, and I find that it is more benign than prescription opioids or certainly street drugs. I guess this notion that's being propagated, this myth that it's not addictive, that one can take it daily, discontinue use abruptly, and not experience withdrawal symptoms. That just wasn't my experience. In fact, I used to go into the head shops, Smoker's Haven, for example. It would be prominently displayed right underneath the cash register, all the different strains. And there were signs that said, please support not banning this product in the state of New Hampshire. And I was very afraid, because I knew that if it was banned, I'd have to discontinue use abruptly and experience the attendant miserable, persistent withdrawal symptoms. So eventually, my wife found out that I was using this substance for the second time. I couldn't stop on my own. I ended up having to leave work. Fortunately, I'm employed. I'm the director of a substance use treatment facility. Utilize my FMLA benefit, which I'm grateful that I have. And I went away to treatment for 30 days. And I experienced withdrawal symptoms even beyond that. Now, I was using a lot. I had a history of opioid use disorder, of course, so my tolerance was pretty high. But this notion, again, that one can take it with no side effects whatsoever, it's just a myth. And I see clients come into treatment where Kratom is their primary substance or their secondary, sometimes tertiary, but they need to go through a period of medical detoxification. And usually it's a COWS protocol, clinical opioid withdrawal scale is what they're measured on, and then they take something like Suboxone to taper off. But the symptoms are severe and
excuse me, please, he's speaking, no one else is to speak while he's speaking.
And yeah, just so finally, I started taking this substance because I had heard that, again, it's a benign, innocuous substance that one can take. It'll help with mood. It sort of acts like an opiate. You'll feel better, and that was my experience. 5 or 7, 10 days later, after I took it consecutively, I woke up in the morning and I said, oh crap, here I go again. Game on. Now I've got to buy it every day. Turns into a $1,200 a month expense, right? That was my experience. I don't know what these folks, they might not use as much as I did, but I know that it's a progressive illness. The disease is progressive. Use is progressive, just like any other substance. So I imagine people's use increases and they're going to need treatment as well. And one final thing, because my insurance provider didn't consider it an actual, they wouldn't cover the treatment. Fortunately, my family had the financial resources to pay out of pocket $17,000. Otherwise, I don't really have a very good solution. At that point, I have to sit at home and suffer and probably lose my job. So finally, I'll close with this. The only thing I wish I had on the front end, and I would agree that this is my own fault, I didn't do enough research, there's no warning label on the package. And I don't see that in the amendment. Letting people know that if you take this and you take it daily, you're going to get sick. You're probably going to lose your job if you stop abruptly. You're going to have to leave your family. There's all sorts of psychosocial stressors involved that are similar to heroin and fentanyl use. Again, it's more, I'm not suggesting to you that it's nearly as fatal as those substances, but the withdrawal symptoms are exactly the same, and I know from experience. Like I said, I'm a recovered IV drug user. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you very much for your testimony. Is there anyone else who either supported the original bill or wants to speak in opposition to the amendment?
I got some.
You want to speak
In opposition to part of the amendment.
Okay. So your name is?
My name is Kevin Murphy. I didn't sign any of this.
Oh, you need to.
I knew that.
But you can, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so my name is Kevin Murphy. I'm originally from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I've been in Manchester for the past 4 years, working through trying to obtain higher education, which I have, and thanks to a lot of different programs in place, I'm able to earn 2 degrees completely for free. Thanks to that grant guarantee, so I don't know if you're all part of that. Thanks. Stick to it. So the one thing, there's a couple things real quick. I don't like this part where you're saying a dealer that violates RSA 146, so this is page 216. Dealer that violates RSA 146.23 shall be subject to an administrative fine of not more than $500 for the first offense and not more than $1,000 for the second or subsequent offense. If we're going to be regulating a substance and somebody's altering it to try and make it more effective or trying to make it more of a mind-altering or psychoactive substance, especially with what they're putting in it, I really think that a more punitive punishment is necessary, because, you know, who knows where it would be. So I think that should be kind of dependent on the situation, but $500 is like, if somebody's messing with somebody's Kratom, that's not, doesn't seem okay, especially because we've heard stories about the Kratom in Sweden. So there's that. And I noticed in the original amendment, and it doesn't mention it here, is the fiscal analysis that was done, which hasn't been done. I don't know if that's been even talked about yet. It's probably pretty new. 808.
This afternoon, so it's not done.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Another thing is that Kratom, I think, you know, a lot of people. My mom, for example, like I told her about it, she's had restless leg syndrome for years, like probably 20 years. The only thing that got her to help her restless leg syndrome was Kratom. Also, the thing about Kratom is I think we're not thinking about it in the right fashion, is that not only is it a sort of psychoactive and it has these kind of slight opioid-like effects, I'm not really sure the nomenclature for it, but it can also be an alternative for going out and drinking alcohol, which is pretty much the only readily accessible substance there is. If somebody goes to the bar Friday night, you know, there's places, for example, in Hawaii that have a kava and Kratom place that's just really a kind of a fun-loving place to be, that doesn't have the kind of altercations that alcohol seems to have all the time, especially on Friday night. So I think, you know, this has the potential to help a lot of people, and it also has the potential to kind of create more of a community surrounded around a wholesome thing, as opposed to just getting drunk and waking up the next day with a hangover, you know? So we can mitigate that kind of behavior through these natural plant substances. And, you know, I appreciate Mr. Herman. Yeah, I appreciate what you do a lot, and the fact that, you know, the University of Florida with the grants, they're really delving into this research, and that's what's important in this new age. It's 2020. We need to understand what these substances are and how they can be used to benefit our society, and not just. And I know it's fear of the unknown. It was a little concerning to me when I just saw that Kratom ban. It's like, y'all just jumped on it like that. Like, let's think about this. Let's take a step back. Let's, you know, congregate and really understand every single side and how we can approach this matter in the most beneficial way to our community. And how can we solve the issue of heroin addiction? How can we, you know, possibly use this to create a better and more developed society? So, yeah, I think, you know, I'm glad that we all took a step back and that Mr. Feltz did this amendment, because I think we have a lot more. It'd be pretty bad if Kratom's going to get banned. So, yeah, if you guys have any questions or concerns in the future, or want somebody to help, a young person to help kind of develop maybe a game plan for this, I'll leave my card right here. I'll leave a few cards for y'all, and you can reach out to me.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy?
Not sure, but thank you. Thank you.
You can leave that with them.
There's a misspelling in the quote, but it doesn't matter. Wait on that.
Here's my proposal. My proposal is that we will hear out anybody who wants to be heard, but otherwise we'll go into executive session and pass this bill with the amendment. Just one second. And pass the bill with the amendment. And what happens then, just let me explain this, is that then it would go to the full Senate. If it passes the full Senate, it would then go over to the House, where there would be another hearing and a chance to further modify it. Otherwise, and we could do that now, and if any of you have written testimony, you could leave that with us, But if you want to be heard, that's why you're here. We're happy to finish. But that's where, I can't speak for the whole committee, but that's where we can go with this at this point. But if you want to be heard, we can keep going with the hearing.
Yes.
Okay, just one second. We're going to keep being heard. I'm going to go through this in order because some of you came here earlier than others. You have to go. Find out where we were. All right. So Jacob Clark.
Sitting here went out to put money in the meter.
Jacob Clark.
Back and have to take care of receipt.
Okay.
You could sit there. This is
Joseph
yours, isn't it?
Duplessis.
Here.
Sherry Dutton. Travis Miller.
I thought you were sitting on
Susan Hargrove. Amanda Doucette. Cheryl Wilkie. Ryan Miltner. By the way, if you haven't signed in, please sign in.
Where do we do that?
I got a sheet for you right here.
Where do we sign?
I got you.
Thank you. Somebody have a pen?
Ryan Miltner?
Yep, I support it.
Okay. You're okay, you're supporting the amendment? Thank you. Rich Rigazzi?
Regardless, I support it.
Okay. Ian Freeman.
Already spoke, thank you.
Got it. Thank you. I can't read this one. Jim with a G. Jim G. Okay. Janice Wilfred? No? I hope I'm not messing with your names. Honda Gretzinger.
Me, right here. I support the amendment.
Do you need to speak?
Sure.
Well, it's up to you.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Thank you for listening. My name is Fonda Gretzinger from Farmington. I found out about Kratom in 2015. Co-worker's daughter died from heroin overdose, and I did not know about it until 3 months after she died. And I have spent many hours on different groups to help addicts find relief with Kratom. I also take Kratom for depression. I've been taking it since 2015. It does help. It's not perfect, but I like to see people still have choices to use what works for them. I like that we've saved so many people from heroin addiction that it's unbelievable, the lives that have changed. And so I'd like to keep that still legal for those that want to get out. And I just want to say that the gentleman that was speaking earlier about the children, 16, 18-year-old, I think, is there a way that we could change the age where it's a parental guidance thing for somebody that's 16, 17, 18? Because that's a really important issue. And that, like you said, we're blocking out a segment of people that really have a hard time with this. We could lose a lot of lives. So, maybe like a 16 and up, or maybe, with parental permission or whatever, some type of way that we can capture those high school students and not lose them. Because I think that's really important.
Thank you.
And that's all I have to say.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Megan Tweedy.
I'm here, I just had a question. Megan Tweedy. I just wondered if you were going to change my opposed to
I can do
support.
that right now.
Oh, thank you.
please. Nobody, come on down.
I'm back. Did you miss me? Well, I've got two things to say on this bill. The first thing is very general. It's about the proper role of government. Thomas Jefferson, in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted amongst men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, and that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish them." Now, whether or not you think people are going to find happiness by taking Kratom, and I don't know, I don't take the stuff. I'm not an addict, I don't need it. But whether or not you think people are going to find happiness by taking Kratom, they have the right to pursue happiness by taking Kratom. Now, some will say, well, Declaration of Independence, that doesn't bind us legally. It's not the Constitution. Well, the 9th Amendment of the Constitution says the enumeration in this Constitution of certain rights shall not be held to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And the first three rights that are retained by the people are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So we have a right to pursue happiness by whatever means we want to, so long as we do not intrude on the equal rights of others to do the same. The second thing I'd like to say is I'd like to give just a view of, I'm a retired gangster. I used to be a pot dealer. I did some time for that. So I know a little bit about gangsterism. And the most dangerous drug cartel in the world is Big Pharma. And people say, drug cartel, how can you call it drug cartel? Drug cartels are out there with guns, shooting people on the corner, taking out the competition. Well, the thing is, they're the cartel, you're the muscle. You, the government, are the muscle. We have drugs, marijuana. When marijuana is legalized completely, opiate deaths drop by 25%. This Big Pharma bigwig who just went to prison for bribing doctors for prescribing opiates to people who didn't need them, guess what? He donated a full $500,000 to keeping weed illegal in the state of Utah. Now, why would he do that? Why would this crook be such a generous man to want to keep kids off pot? Well, the reason is because before people don't die of opiate overdoses, they don't buy his product, and he doesn't make money off them. That's why. Every single illegal drug is a drug that is useful for something, in many cases more useful than what Big Pharma will give you. Okay? Weed works much better for depression for some people. It varies from person to person, than Big Pharma's poison Prozac, which has driven a couple of my friends to suicide, so I speak feelingly of it. But they don't want us to have the option of the safe way to deal with it. They want us to be forced to their way. Johns Hopkins University has done studies using LSD, using mushrooms, showing that instead of taking it every day, they can do therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, with people who are tripping on LSD or mushrooms, and they can make permanent breakthroughs that do not need maintenance. Now, that's not what Big Pharma wants to hear, because they want to sell you some drugs every day. They want to be out on that corner dealing their crack. Well, the problem is, that's not what we need. I guess that's pretty much all I've got to say on the subject, except I realize that for the last century that you've been making war on drug users, you've been trying to help, And I just want to let y'all know, we've had all the help we can stand. You're killing us. Stop helping, please. Any questions?
You're not saying I'm 100 years old, though, right?
No. I'm not saying you personally. Actually, if you want to know who started the war on drugs, look up a guy named Anslinger. Now, Anslinger was kind of an amazing guy. He was so racist that they wanted to fire him in 1920 for being a racist.
Right. Well, thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions? Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving along. Denise Noyes.
I support the amendment.
Need to speak?
Nope.
Thank you, Denise. Kevin Bloom of the NHLA.
Yes, I'd like to drop opposition and support the amendment.
Okay. Douglas Noyes.
I'd like to support the amendment.
Creates problems with my liver. They put me on Plaquenil, which started to affect my kidneys. And then I just didn't know what to do. So I started researching, and somebody told me about Kratom. And I was a little scared of it at first because I have anxiety. And I didn't know if I should take it or not. So I did. I went and I got some. And I had somebody sit in the room with me while I took it, just in case. And after 4 small capsules, something happened. And those joints that weren't moving, my breathing, everything was different. I wasn't high. I didn't have to take painkillers, which I didn't anyway. It's just kind of changed my life really. I can get up in the morning, I can go to work and work with my patients. I'm very compassionate, I'm very good at my job. And I'm just not ready to submit myself to chemo. I watched my mom die from cancer, and she had to take a lot of opiates just to get past the pain. And I'm not ready for that. So this has really changed my life. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for sharing.
Emily Tyler.
I haven't got to read it yet, but from the sounds of it, I would say support.
Thank you. Laura Kiefer Spano. Matthew.
Urbaniak.
That's it. Sorry, can't read.
I know everybody wants to go home. I figured I'd say something real quick because I said something somebody else hasn't said yet. So I'm Matthew Urbaniak, a lifelong resident of New Hampshire. I live in Northwood. I'm also a Kratom vendor. I've been using it for about 5 years, and I've been sober from heroin for about that long. I actually brought along, I wanted to suggest that we ban extracts and things with high concentrations of hydroxymetragynine, which is one of the 2 main constituents of Kratom. I actually brought along some products that show the difference. And these are products that are adulterated, and a lot of people misunderstand because there's nothing other than Kratom in these. All right, but the levels of them are what has been altered. And you can actually see that in one of these products, there's 2.79 milligrams of hydroxymetragynine in each capsule. And in this new one that they just recently released, it's 0.2 milligrams per capsule, as opposed to 2.79. And now there are customers going into stores right now looking for batch numbers when they're buying these because they've gone and bought some of these and it does nothing for them. And now they're going into withdrawals and seeking products containing high levels of hydroxymetragynine. Now, I and my Kratom company have only ever sold raw Kratom powder to people, addicts like me. I mean, I've reached out to people and helped friends who I've known who are still struggling and seen lots of success with that, and then lots of success with people who are having pain and things like that. But in my time, I've had payment processors shut down. We've lost a $30,000 shipment. I'm like a small-time guy. I started with $200. I was right out of rehab when I started it, my Kratom company, and that was a big hit. And it's like there's still a lot of issues as far as the FDA goes, I think, and regulating and on taking payments and those things. But anyways, I just figured that I would show this.
So your take is it would be helpful to get rid of those kind of things, but to allow the legit people.
Exactly, allow raw kratom powder and other things, but this bill does say those things. So I just brought this along, and this morning I woke up not knowing if I was gonna have a business tomorrow, so I figured I should at least get up and say something.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right. Maria Andrews.
I'd like to speak. I have just a few things to say. I spent a good part of yesterday preparing for this public hearing today, and just before I was finished typing up my statement, my printer died. So I don't have a printed copy, but I can email it to you.
Yeah.
If you give me an email address, I'll send it to you. Okay.
Do you support the amendment?
Okay, the original bill I oppose. The amendment, I'm going to say this. I support it with one qualification. I have one concern, and that is the age restriction of 21. I agree with the gentleman that, well, first of all, I live in Hebron. My husband and I have been there now for 7 years. We moved up from Connecticut. We love it here. Anyway, with regard to the age restriction of 21, I think that's a little bit too high. I really feel that it should be brought back to 18. And I do understand the other gentleman's comment about even younger would be nice at young, but I think children at that age, they are children, they're in high school. I think parental control, parental supervision would be, or guardian supervision would be important in that respect. So I would like to see that amendment move the age back to 18 with the way it is now. Yes, it is now. You can't buy Kratom if you're less than 18 years of age. Okay. But I would like to just give you my experience with Kratom. Just give me a minute there. I got it on my iPad. Thank God I didn't lose the document. I've had a lot of experience with Kratom. I'm a retired infectious disease epidemiologist, and by the way, you're probably wondering, what am I doing here? Shouldn't I be more concerned about the coronavirus? I am very concerned, and I've been following it since January as a retired person. I was employed by the Connecticut Department of Public Health when I retired. I have 5 medical conditions, okay, that cause me moderate to severe pain on a daily basis. And those conditions are, and I know, to heck with HIPAA, that's okay. I don't mind you guys knowing about my medical conditions because that lends proof to what I have to say. I have fibromyalgia. I have neuropathy, osteoarthritis, spinal stenosis, and I have several herniated discs. So these conditions cause me moderate to severe pain every day. And sometimes I can't even sleep. Without the help of Kratom or something to relieve the pain, I can't even sleep. Sometimes I can't even lay down flat. It hurts too much. More importantly, I'm the sole caregiver of my husband who has Alzheimer's, who was recently diagnosed. We were hoping for a really great retirement up here in New Hampshire. I don't know if we're going to have that anymore. So I'm his sole caregiver. We have no children. We have no family members close to us. So I'm it. And if I can't function on a daily basis, if I can't have quality of life and relief of my pain, I cannot take care of my husband. And if that should happen, when I heard that there was a bill to ban Kratom, I couldn't eat. I was so upset, and I started thinking about my husband, sitting right across from me. What am I going to do? If I can't help him, he will be committed. He will have to leave home and live in a long-term care facility. There's no other option. I have experience with Alzheimer's. My father had it. My mother-in-law died from it. So I know what I'm facing. Now, Kratom, as we know, has restored the quality of life for a lot of people. It restored the quality of life for me, taken from me by illness and pain. And I really feel that Kratom is very safe. By the way, I do have experience in the pharmaceutical industry. I worked in the industry for about 9 years. And so I understand GMP and good manufacturing practices and what is involved in bringing a drug product to market.
very experienced with the FDA and all the requirements. I have a love-hate relationship with the FDA. Okay, Kratom I feel is safe and effective in relieving severe pain, and it has no, at least in my experience, no serious or life-threatening side effects, unlike narcotics. I do have some experience with narcotics. I was never addicted. I was put on a prescription narcotic drug for, when I first moved here, I went to pain management. I was put on a prescription narcotic medication that after 3 years of being on that, I had to get off. I had to stop taking it. It had considerable side effects. It did things to me, very subtle, but definitely had very serious side effects. My judgment, how I handled money, and I'm the person that pays the bills in the family, and I had to get off it. And so I did. I stopped taking it after 3 years, and I heard about Kratom, and I heard that Kratom helps addicts withdraw, that it masks the symptoms. So I thought it might be a good thing for me to get some before I stop taking it, before I go off the narcotic drug. And I did, and it did help, and it helped me to with very little discomfort, to stop taking the narcotic prescription medication that I was on. And okay. I want to say that it's safe. I did say safe. I feel safe and effective at relieving severe pain. No serious or life-threatening side effects, unlike narcotics. It does not cause, at least in my experience, does not cause euphoria. It does not impair my ability to operate machinery or drive a car. I can function in a normal capacity. It doesn't get me high. I've never had that experience. It helps me to sleep. It might even help with I have a bit of a problem with anxiety. I worry about everything, and it really has helped me with that also. So, I think Kratom, it's not known to cause tolerance. I haven't ever experienced tolerance with it. I take it every day, and I've been doing it now. I'm beginning my 3rd year of taking it on a daily basis. I have to take a pretty high dose because my pain is very severe. I've never had to increase my dose. It's remaining at the same level. With regard to, I want to comment on that gentleman's remarks about withdrawal from Kratom or dependence on Kratom. All I have noticed with that, I can go for quite a long time without taking it. And then I find that I start thinking about taking it. And is it because I'm suffering from a withdrawal, or is it because my pain is coming back? And I have to honestly say that I have not suffered any kind of dependence on Kratom. I think I start thinking about taking it again because I'm in pain. My pain is starting to come back. Toward the end of the day especially, the neuropathy gets really bad. So I really have a problem. Maybe some people are different. Maybe some people do become tolerant and addicted to Kratom. I've never experienced that. So that's what I wanted to say about that. And I want to wind this up because I know we all want to go home. I think I don't have to tell you, I was going to go into some of the science behind Kratom. It acts on the same opioid receptors in the brain.
I think we've actually
You
heard
know
that,
that.
so if you can
You've
wrap
been
it
given
up.
that information, right. It comes from South, do you know about where Kratom comes from? Okay. So I feel, now I know you're not going to ban it anymore, so I'm really happy, all right? I think it would be a wrong move going forward to do that in New Hampshire because we have such a serious opiate problem here. And so to remove that from people's ability to have that, to use that, to control their pain or to help them with their addiction, if they get off the drugs, I think that would make our opiate problem worse. I think it would be self-defeating to do that. So again, I'm just going to wrap it up by saying, personally, as the only caregiver for my husband who has Alzheimer's, it's critically important for me to be able to maintain my quality of life and my ability to function to help him. And also the relief of pain. I mean, nothing has relieved my pain like Kratom, even the prescription narcotic. It's been extremely effective. I'm very careful about the source. When I started researching it, I didn't just buy from anyone. I have a very good source. I call them on the phone, they ship it to me. And it's a very pure product. I've checked out their they have certificate of analysis. They analyze each batch that they get in to make sure there's no impurity. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't gonna harm myself. So I think we can get around all these issues.
Right, and I think the amendment would address your source.
Pardon? I'm a little hard of hearing.
Right, the amendment will address your source
Yes,
issues.
I think that's very important, yeah, to make sure that what's being offered to the public is safe and effective.
Okay, well, thank
So
you.
I think if you give me an email address, I will email this to you. Thank you. I'll take care of it shortly. I'll send this to you.
Thank you.
Thank you
very
for
much.
listening to what I have to say.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? We are going to close the hearing. Thank you all for your patience.